Hello, welcome everybody to the first stream of Agile Meets Architecture. If you don't know what Agile Meets Architecture is, we are a conference in Berlin that will happen this year for the third time. This year in April, we are trying to bridge the worlds of Agile software development and software architecture, bring the experts and all the participants together so that we have a good exchange between those two. Today is a quite short glimpse into the Agile Meets Architecture with Michael Plöd. Michael is also part of our program committee and did help us to build a pretty good program, I think. And he will talk about his experiences with Team Topologies. You will have a lot of chances afterwards to discuss with us and ask questions. Use the chat for that. And I hope we will have some interesting questions after his talk again. And then you will have a good picture what the Agile Meets Architecture is all about. So without any further ado, I would say, Michael, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Jörg. Thanks to everyone for joining this pre-conference thing, how I called it yesterday in a stream on LinkedIn. I want to talk about lessons learned over the last 5 years of introducing team topologies to various organizations. So first of all, a big happy birthday applause is actually due to the whole idea behind team topologies. Team topologies came out in 2019, and I think it gathered quite a bit of attraction in the community. And so what I want to focus about, I work as a consultant at InnoQ. I'm a fellow there, and I have a strong domain-driven design background. I actually come from the DDD community, and that was my path towards team topologies, actually. And I helped quite a few organizations to introduce the ideas behind fast flow, that all the ideas that team topologies have propagated. And this is a lessons learned kind of thing. So what works well, what doesn't work so well, what is well understood, what's not so good understood. And that's what I want to talk about today. And last year or in 2023, I think it was, at Agile Meets Architecture, one of the things that I heavily enjoyed at the conference was the exchange, the so-called hallway track, between the participants, the speakers, and everyone that was present at the conference. And so please don't hesitate to raise any questions in the chat, and we will address them maybe during the talk if I see them, or afterwards at the end of this session. So to give you a little bit of an idea how I will structure my talk and my slides, there are some slides with a darker background and orange fonts, and they show things that work out really well, that are well understood, where I have to say, that's a no-brainer, that's something you shouldn't worry too much about. Whereas the ones with the orange background, they address topics that are not so well understood, or where I saw that there are quite a bit of challenges where you need to be aware about some things. And I try to follow up on most of these with some advice, how you can address them. So I don't want to limit myself to say, oh, this sucks, that doesn't work, that's a challenge. I try to give you some solutions based on my experience. So the major topics that I want to talk about are the fundamental team topologies and the team interaction modes, platforms and platform teams, or platform groups, or they are also called nowadays, the ideas behind fast flow of teams, and the transformational steps towards team topologies. So let's step into the first topic here. So what about the fundamental team topologies and the team interaction modes? One observation that I have is that these things are actually pretty well understood. But And that's the point. Yeah. So I would say these 4 team topologies, the 4 team types, they are really well known. Yeah. Also the team interaction modes. But what I see is that team topologies very often gets just reduced to, oh, there's 4 team types and 3 interaction modes, and we can draw colorful diagrams based on that. And I think there is a little bit of a danger associated to that. And I think what I see as a first step is that there is a lack of preciseness when it comes to labeling teams with these fundamental team topologies. It's a little bit like labeling folks with DevOps roles who just do ops work. Yeah, so, oh, this is our DevOps team, and this is just a relabeling. Oh, we have some kind of a team, and let's call them a streamline team. I think you should ask yourself the question, does this team really live some of those behaviors that have been described in the Team Topologies book by Matthew and Manuel? So do they aim to produce a steady flow of feature delivery? Do they have time, budget, space to address code quality changes? Is there a high degree of drive to drive down manual hands of work to other teams and stuff like that? And a very helpful thing is, in my eyes, a nuance to these 4 team types, which is actually propagated in the book, where Matthew and Manuel, the authors and inventors of team topologies, said, well, these fundamental team topologies act like magnets. Yeah, so a certain team should be heavily drawn or attracted by one of these team types. Yeah, and what I sometimes used at customers of mine, and this is not an official Team Topologies methodology, you won't find that on the Team Topologies website or on the books, but that's something that I heavily use as a consultant when I work together with organizations, is that I visualize those magnets. So what I say is, okay, let's assess together with the team, and please do that in a collaborative fashion together with the people of the team. Don't do that as an outside inspection. How good of a streamlined team are you? Don't do that, please. Yeah, this should be a collaborative effort. So where you ask, hey, where do we have aspects of an enabling team in that team? Are there maybe some tasks and things that have the character that tend towards a platform team? How about a complicated subsystem team, a streamlined team, and so on? And you can, in my eyes, visualize that on a visualization that looks like this. And I have to say, this is very helpful, because transitioning to team topologies, it gives everyone a great degree of understanding that those are not templates that you shove upon teams. Yeah, this is a mental model, a thinking model. So, and maybe I mean, I have seen quite a few teams that looked like that, and I have to say, roughly speaking, that's okay-ish. Yeah, maybe we start addressing the platform side of things, and maybe remove a bit of these tasks from the team and move them to another team, if that's possible. But in generally speaking, yeah, there is a high degree of an enabling fashion in that team. However, you will find teams that are enabling platform streamline complicated subsystem teams. Had that quite a few times during socio-technical architecture reviews, where there were teams that had aspects of all of these things. And you can imagine that these teams were heavily suffering under a very high degree of cognitive overload, and they were not very happy, and they had prioritization problems, a lot of stuff like that. And there has actually been some development in the team topology space that is not written down in the book. It's neither in the English version nor, for instance, the German translation, which I translated, but based on the English book. Yeah. So, but on the website, you will find that. So there is a team type called undefined. Yeah. So that's for teams where we can say, well, they don't fit into any of these categories. Yeah. So team type undefined helps you to label things and say, okay, listen, the task and the job of that team is not clearly defined. We need to work on the boundaries of that team. We need to work on their mission and so on. And I think that's a very valuable thing. And it gives you a chance in discussions with improving things, so that you don't just say, oh, well, that's a stream-aligned team, but we need to tweak some things. Yeah, we need to work on that. I think a statement like that lacks a certain degree of urgency. But if we say, hey, we want to move towards the ideas of team topologies, and this team is undefined, yeah, it gives the whole matter another degree of urgency and meaning. Yeah. Another thing that I observe is that boundaries are important, and that this is understood by most of my customers. Yeah, also by a lot of people who are involved in the team topology space. So, for instance, I do a lot of workshops for identifying team boundaries, for sharpening team boundaries. Yeah, we work together with our customers. But yeah, and coming from a domain-driven design guy, that may sound a little bit awkward. Domain-driven design alone is not the solution towards those boundaries. Yes, bounded contexts from domain-driven design are very often pitched as great ideas for identifying team boundaries. Yeah. Even myself, I have slides in different talks that have the claim the bounded context is a team-first boundary. Yeah. Fair enough. But please don't limit your scope to only domain-driven design, and don't go into any domain-driven design frenzy at that point. If you take a closer look what is actually propagated by the team topologies folks, you will find out that they have this concept called fracture planes. Fracture planes are a bunch of questions and heuristics that help you to identify team boundaries for fast flow of work. And you will see that the DDD bounded context is just one of those fracture planes. And I really want to stress this. Don't stop with the bounded context. Please take a broader look at things. Yeah, and I'm a very, very big fan of all things domain-driven design. I'm convinced that there are a lot of really, really great ideas. But once you're in the solution space, I think you shouldn't just limit yourself to that perspective, but also broaden that perspective. I very often also do that in the case of software architecture, where I say, okay, let's start with bounded context. Maybe there are great candidates for microservice deployments or for modules in a well-modularized monolithic setting. But please, from a software architecture perspective, broaden your scope towards quality criteria and stuff like that. In the case of team topologies and team boundaries, the fracture planes propagate, for instance, isolating stuff where different levels of regulatory compliance are necessary by change cadence. So maybe one team requires a very high degree of a change cadence, let's say release daily to production or bi-weekly or something like that, whereas others can live with a more relaxed change cadence. Team location. Yeah, if you have a team that is spread out over the whole of Europe or the world, maybe you want to take that into account. How about the change risk? Yeah. There is one thing called performance isolation, where I personally, when I work with these things, I broaden that scope. Performance isolation takes a look at performance requirements for the software that those teams produce, which is a great idea. But I think in software architecture, there is another category drivers for architecture, that's quality requirements, quality attributes of the software. All those ilities, availability, scalability, changeability, maintainability, testability, and so on. And for me, performance is one aspect among many, and I would prefer taking the broader scope. How about technology, or you focus teams towards certain user personas? Those things, they aren't a template. They are heuristics, yeah, and you need to discuss them. And please have the expectation that those discussions are really challenging and are really hard. You will have to navigate a lot of trade-offs. You will rarely find a clear-cut template for finding those team boundaries. So navigating trade-offs isn't just a hard thing in software architecture, it's also a hard thing in team topologies and also domain-driven design. There is another hint from the team topologies folks, another perspective that you can take, that's called independent service heuristics. Independent service heuristics has been published on the Team Topologies GitHub account, and also I think on the Team Topologies website. And those are a bunch of heuristics that you can answer with a yes, no, maybe, in a yes, no, maybe fashion. And the screenshot that you see actually comes from a real-world workshop where I worked together with Eduardo da Silva, who's also a regular guest and speaker at the Agile Meets Architecture conference, and a person whom I appreciate a lot. So make sure to check out his website and his blog post, because it's really great. And we worked together, and that was for a company that was producing school books. They wanted to merge their print and analog business, so like really the actual books, together with their online offerings towards a more combined service offering. And we did a bunch of Team Topologies, DDD related workshops with them. And that was the answer. And we had some domain candidates and asked the people, hey, would you answer that with yes, no, maybe? And try to tend towards yes, no. And even visually, yeah, you clearly see there are a bunch of really clear-cut things. Whereas these things here in the middle, well, that's something we should actually discuss. And those three here, they look really good. But I think the heavy discussions are probably in that area here. Yeah, so that's very nice, a very nice visualization. If you're interested in these things, there is a hint. The Team Topologies folks, they sometimes publish mini books. Yeah, and one mini book was released in March 2023 about finding software boundaries for fast flow. And there's a lot of discussion about these things. Authors include Alberto Brandolini, who's the inventor of the method event storming, Nick Tune, who's a really great mind with a strong focus on architecture modernization, DDD and stuff. I wrote an article, Susanne Kaiser, who is really publishing great content on wordly mapping, team topologies, domain-driven design stuff. So this is for free. It actually costs you an email address. So you need to share the email address with the Team Topologies folks, and maybe you get some marketing emails from them, but it doesn't cost you money. It costs you an email address. Another part, I think there is a great degree of awareness for the importance of cognitive load in the teams. That's something that I observe. But there are a lot of organizations that struggle with measuring cognitive load. And I think that's a little bit of an open point, how you want to do that. Maybe you have some really skilled agile coaches that can support you with that. And you take a look at that in your retrospectives and stuff. The Team Topologies folks published a new product called Team Pressure. Yeah, but I have to say, I just want to mention that I haven't tried that yet. So I can't tell you if this is good stuff, great stuff. What I can say, it comes heavily from the thinking from the Team Topologies community. Again, if we take a look at the team interaction modes, they're well understood and well known, but there are a bunch of misconceptions. The first one that I find very, very often is that there is the opinion out there that X as a service is good and collaboration is bad. And that is actually wrong. Yeah, so I always find myself in these discussions, oh, Michael, those two teams, they're in a collaboration and a collaboration is bad. But what does collaboration mean by the definition of Team Topologies? It means that those teams collaborate for a limited amount of time towards a clearly defined purpose. So collaboration, as defined by Team Topologies, is limited in time and follows a very, very clear plan. Something like that. So that image was taken from the Team Topologies book, and Team Topologies promotes a very nuanced approach towards collaboration and access to service. So in this example here, we have two teams collaborating with each other, and they drive down the collaboration over the time in order to find out what is a really great X as a service relationship between those teams. And in this case, the collaboration is actually a really good idea. And it's established rightfully so. So this opinion, collaboration bad, X as a service good, is not right. That's actually wrong. But you may ask yourself the question now, what about collaborations that take very long, where there's no end in sight, and where the purpose isn't clear? That is actually not collaboration in the sense of team topologies, and therefore they've introduced the team interaction mode undefined. So the suggestion is to use team interaction mode, undefined interaction, for long-running collaborations without a clear purpose. Yeah, so there is a strong emphasis on that. That you should do that. And I think, again, with the team type undefined, this helps. And this is not part of any of the books. That's on the website. One thing, I think, maybe from a team perspective, those team interaction modes, they are a good idea and they're a good starting point. But from a strong socio-technical architecture perspective, they're sometimes not deep enough. Yeah, especially they give you no indication about the technical side of things. So those are very, very, I would say, social interactions, but not technical interactions. Yeah, maybe X as a service implies a certain service offering, API offering, provisioning of certain interfaces and stuff like that. But they're heavily on the social side. And we want to use these things, obviously, for socio-technical things. And I think there is a lack here. Yeah, which is, from a Team Topologies perspective, fair enough. But there is a solution to that. And that solution actually comes from the domain-driven design space. Domain-driven design knows for over 21 years now. That's nothing new in the DDD space. This stuff has been in the good old blue book by Eric Evans. It knows a concept called context maps. And they can help you to dig deeper into those relationships. Now, the challenge with context maps in the DDD space is that they are very loosely described. Yeah, so the definitions are not so clear-cut. There's a lot of ambiguity in the descriptions of them, and you need to make up your own mind a little bit to that. You need to make up your own mind with that. On GitHub, there is an organization called DDD Crew. It's github.com/DDD-crew. But if you Google or go on DuckDuckGo and search GitHub DDD Crew, you should find your way. And there is a context mapping chapter with a cheat sheet and explanations of all of these patterns. And that can maybe be a very good starting point for these things. So with context maps, we can dig into that X as a service relationship. So there is a complicated subsystem team, which provides an X as a service relationship to a stream-aligned team. Now let's see how that is built up. There are a bunch of bounded contexts in that complicated subsystem team. They provide the interface from one bounded context as an open host service, which is a description for a public API or something like an API offering. This team is upstream. They have a lot of power. And on the downstream side, there is a model-to-model transformation on the integration. So this is a rather loosely coupled X as a service relationship. You can also visualize things like you can say, there's a customer-supply relationship. So sometimes the stream-aligned team here demands stuff from the upstream team, from the service provider. Maybe that switches to a short amount of collaboration. That can be the case. Doesn't necessarily have to be. And the letter down there is a very, very loosely coupled X as a service relationship because it's based on separate ways. Separate ways is a pattern where the DDD space says, well, those teams, they don't talk a lot to each other. So imagine you integrating with the Google Maps API and you won't be in meetings with Google. You just use your service as a service, and that's about it. Yeah. You can also dig deeper into collaborations, where we can say, this is a tightly coupled collaboration. So context maps can really help you to dig deeper into those things. In my eyes, let's stick with the X as a service relationships. I think there is very often a too relaxed interpretation of them. In my eyes, X as a service is not just offering an API and then ignoring the rest. It, in my eyes, implies self-service capabilities and no interactions between the teams. So it's just like the Google API thing. You use the Google Maps API. You won't spend time in meetings with the Google folks and so on. That's something you don't do in that relationship. Let's move to platforms and platform teams. I would say platform engineering is serious business nowadays. That's understood. I very often in this case see a lot of technical platform engineering for technical platforms. I would be very happy to see a lot of business platform engineering. So engineering for platforms that provide basic business capabilities. Platform is not just a technical thing. It can also be business capabilities that like payment, sending letters and stuff like that. And there is actually a difference between the logical platform and the platform team. This is described in the book, yeah, but it gets overlooked very easily by many folks. Yeah? So we can have a platform team or a platform group, but that can be a part of a bigger thing. Yeah, so there is the logical platform, which can consist of different team types, and a platform team. Yeah, and in this case, the streamlined teams, yeah, their customers or the other internal streamlined teams. Yeah? A concept that is part of the book that gets even more ignored than the minimum viable product is the thinnest viable platform. Thinnest viable platform is basically that you start very small and that you find out what is a good platform, what works very well. This is an integral part of the Team Topologies book. I mean, also minimum viable product is, I would say, understood by some agile coaches and product designers, but I'm not so sure if it's lived in practice the way it should be. Yeah. So I see way too many FVPs, fully viable products, being labeled as MVPs, and the same applies to platforms as well. I see that Team Topologies helped ignite a high desire for self-service capabilities and platforms. So I think this is a very, very good development. I think the DevOps folks started with that, and the Team Topologies folks who have very strong origins in the DevOps space, they made it very prominent, and I think there is an awareness about that. But the establishment of that is sometimes quite a bit of a struggle. Let's take a look at the fast flow part. I think, especially in 2024, there has been a very strong shift in the awareness. In the early days of Team Topologies, it was all about the team interaction modes and the team types. Yeah, and you shouldn't do Team Topologies for that. You should be doing Team Topologies for the flow. Yeah, so for the workflow, for the flow of the teams. And I think there is a strongly exponentially raising awareness that this is important. However, there is a bit of a struggle. Hey, how do we visualize flow? How can we collaborate together, do that in a collaborative fashion? There are some ideas in the Team Topology space. So these visualizations with the team types, the team interaction modes, or even as a starter, where you start off with an undefined team, manual handovers, and so on, can be a good starting point. However, I want to recommend you one of my favorite books of 2024, and that's the Flow Engineering book by Steve Pereira and Andrew Davis. So next, together with the Learning Systems Thinking book by Diana Montalian, this was my absolute favorite read of 2024, and I actually start apply ideas from that book in my daily work now. Yeah. So just last week I did a bigger workshop with a customer where we grabbed those ideas from Flow Engineering and visualized some things in the Team Topologies context. And so there are a bunch of visualizations. So Flow Engineering ramps up on top of value stream mapping, for instance, but simplifies value stream mapping to a certain degree so that it's more suitable for a collaborative fashion, for software, and so on. I mean, the core of value stream mapping had its origins in the industrial space. Yeah, where it provided a lot of value. In the software space, things are sometimes a little bit different, and the Flow Engineering folks, they really, really address these things, and I can highly recommend you that. I think together with the ideas from Team Topologies, that's just a perfect fit. together. So that book came out last year. Very big recommendation. Everyone, if you start reading Team Topologies now, finish reading Team Topologies, and after that, read the flow engineering stuff. That's good stuff. All right. Now, that's just a few words about flow. Now, I want to, at the end, talk a bit about the transformation towards Team Topologies. I see a very high drive for Team Topologies among the teams themselves. I see a high degree of understanding that enabling teams are a key success factor for successful transformations. But establishing enabling teams is sometimes hard. And I want to give you a little bit of example here. What I have seen quite a bit in practice regarding, for instance, architecture modernizations in combination with Team Topologies. And so very often you see someone from the management, excuse me, that says, well, we need to speed up our flow of work. We need a faster time to market. I think that's a saying that quite a few of the listeners of this stream have heard quite a few times. And the teams complain, hey, we have so many bottlenecks. There's so many team dependencies. We always depend on someone else. And maybe the architecture team comes along and says, well, microservices in the cloud, they will speed up the delivery. And the boss heard about cross-functional teams. Maybe that's a great idea. And the desired goal looks a little bit like that. Yeah, well, we have a sales funnel team, a scoring team, contracting, customer contact, and so on. And there is a desire to make these teams as autonomous as possible. However, if the teams are not used to that, to working in that fashion, because they worked in waterfall processes and yearly plannings and stuff like that, they may not be too happy about that. And so an outside voice comes in and says, well, they have a valid point. And I very often see a misunderstanding here. Management said, well, shouldn't they be excited? Isn't that cool? Yeah. And please don't ignore the cognitive load that's associated to that. Yeah. What's the load of these teams in these transformations? Yeah. So I introduced a cognitive load-o-meter. So first of all, they may have to split up the monolith. They have to learn new technologies. DevOps comes into play. Well, you don't just write code. You also are responsible for running it in production. Yeah, you build it, you run it. Great idea. You may have distributed systems. Distributed systems are hard. Yeah, that's a whole new level of thinking. And well, isn't that great? Now you're responsible for all of that. Yeah, and so you run a substantial risk that the teams that you want to move into that direction run the risk of burning out. Yeah? And I think as much as Team Topology promotes autonomous teams, the Scrum folks, for instance, they have a really good visualization for that, which I quote on that slide. Yeah, just telling a team that's at the beginning of a transformational journey that they are now autonomous, that they are responsible, will end up in chaos. These teams won't make any decisions. They are too afraid. Yeah? So you need to grow the autonomy over time. So one step is you go ahead and establish an enabling team. And very often, yeah, you need to enable the future enablers first in these transformations. Yeah. And a stakeholder group that can help you very well with that is, for instance, personal development, for establishing training curriculums, that they work together with coaching, training, career paths, also provide psychological safety. Imagine you have an ivory tower architecture team. And you say, well, we move a lot of the architecture work towards the streamlined teams in the future. They will be afraid for their jobs. So creating an environment of psychological safety is an absolute key success factor in that area. So after that, you go the very first small steps, and you try to enable folks. The management needs to back up those teams. There needs to be a bubble of safety. And the goal is to gain experience, to do stuff, succeed, fail, learn from the failings, do stuff, repeat, and so on. And finally, these teams, they work as an enabling team. It lives on, But after that, we make the teams in charge, so that they are responsible and they can tackle those tasks. What I observe, at least in Germany, in these areas, is that middle managers are regularly really scared of these ideas. Some of you may laugh, some of you may laugh, but the question, where am I in that picture from a middle manager, has occurred a couple of times to me. I see a bunch of folks giggling now behind their screens. I can't imagine that. But please take this serious. We talk a lot about psychological safety. And that includes folks in management positions as well. They have fears as well. Those are people with families as well. Those are people who have to pay off mortgages and so on. Of course, they get a higher payment and stuff. But rarely some of those folks are super rich or wherever. And I think also a rich person deserves a certain degree of psychological safety and respect. And please take that seriously and address those concerns. One thing that has helped me pretty well on that journey is, especially in the first transformational steps, to establish a management enabling team. So that enables the management to move towards more autonomous teams, to give them more empowerment. Also, that helps them to address their fears and concerns, and helps them with questions like budgeting, salaries, and stuff like that. This can be an extremely valuable team. What I see, typical skills are like agile coaching skills, for instance. Agile coaches with excellent management communication skills may be really suitable persons in these kinds of teams. And from my own experience, I can say that's a really good idea, especially if you're doing that in Germany, or if you're in a very historically grown organization, with a lot of politics going on. That can be a very, very big helping factor. Another thing that I want to highlight that sounds a little bit like a long shot, but I actually mean it. Salary systems can be a total showstopper for anything in terms of team topologies. That may sound a little bit awkward, but if you think closely about that, you will realize, oh yeah, there is a point. Now, let's go back to that company where I had the example. We try to establish enabling teams, move autonomy to the teams, and suddenly the Workers' Council appears. Hey, we have a few questions. Happened to me a few years ago. That's a realistic example, a real-world example, actually. So what are you folks doing here, actually? Well, we improve people's work, We give them more autonomy and freedom and so on. And we increase the collaboration and decrease orders to others and so on. And the Workers' Council will say, well, that's not that easy. We oppose that idea due to the current salary system. I looked like that when I heard that. I was like taken by absolute surprise. I was like, what? Are you serious? And they said, well, let's take a look at the salary bands. The example here is a salary band from the German market. So the salaries may vary due to markets. Yeah. So I once did that talk in a different country, and the whole audience was laughing at the salary. So I wasn't aware about that. So if you're in a different market, maybe you need to replace your numbers. But I would say that's realistic for most of parts of Germany. Yeah. So as a software architect at the lowest levels, yeah, you design architectures. They are being reviewed by senior folks. As a software architect level 2, you give architectural instructions to other teams. You're responsible for those instructions. Yeah, so you tell some team, if you want to integrate, you need to work with Apache Kafka, event-driven architecture. It works like that, and I'm responsible for that. And you have to follow my orders, basically. Yeah, typically ivory tower architecture stuff. Well, as a level 3 architect, you lead teams of architects. You're responsible for the overall architecture. And the showstopper is in the middle. So if you, for instance, establish an architecture enabling team that has the goal of enabling others so that they can create their own architectural decisions and that they are also responsible for them, you won't get a pay raise in that system, because the system tells you you have to tell others what to do. So Workers' Council says, well, the current state of the salary system prevents these members of the enabling team of progressing in their salary and career paths. That is a tough showstopper, and once people realize that, the acceptance for Team Topologies tends towards 0. Yeah. And in that case, at that customer, the Workers' Council also said, well, the same applies to the domain experts. So on the business side, we have folks that get more money because they write down requirements for the engineers where they tell them what to code. And now you want to establish collaborative modeling where that happens together. We need to bring in HR. Yeah? And HR can really help you with that. And what I want to tell you, I want to make you aware of that. Because if you approach that in a controlled fashion, if you just ask, hey, salary system, HR, we have the following questions. We have this plan. Is there some showstopper hidden in the salary system? Once you have a proactive approach to that, you will probably be able to address that in time in a proactive fashion. And my experience from various customers where I was in those discussions was that actually from the Workers' Council side, there was a high degree of motivation for that, because basically they thought that's a great idea. And they were very, very supportive with that. Yeah? Maybe that's just a German market thing. That could be because I'm from Germany. But maybe you need to be aware of that. Kai asked the question, did not get it. Why is the level 2 architect a problem? Why should the Workers' Council complain? Let me explain again, Kai. In an enabling team, usually doesn't give instructions to others. They enable others. Yeah, so this We are the ivory tower architecture team that tells the development teams what to do, and that's embodied in the salary system. The change with the enabling is that this goes away, that this team now helps the teams to make their own decisions. And the salary system tells, if you don't give any architectural instructions to other teams, you won't get that salary. And Kai, that's where the problem was. Yeah. All right. I have one last thing to wrap this up. Another boss fight in terms of Agile and team topologies are always budgeting processes. Budgeting is unfortunately not addressed at all by team topologies. So how do you do the funding? How do you do the budgeting for the teams, and so on? And I think that is something that you have to address. So if you have a project-based budgeting, that will probably sooner or later clash with the ideas of team topologies. And so an idea, for instance, cross-functional teams is that you take a look into value stream funding, team-based fundings, outcome-based fundings, or incremental funding. So there are a bunch of strategies out there. There's actually books in the Agile space about that, and I recommend you to look into that. And what I found out by working with a few customers is that probably for streamlined teams, so that there's an overall budget which is funded incrementally, so that you have an incremental funding cycle for the teams. And probably for the streamlined complex subsystem teams, value stream funding is probably the most interesting approach, followed by outcome-based funding, maybe for special activities, special OKRs, for instance. And for the enabling teams, I think team-based funding is the best idea because, you have a certain amount of people that you need to pay. An idea, but that's a very, very progressive idea that will be a very, very big and challenging change for many organizations, is that the enabling team funds itself like a consulting company, by lending people to others, and they pay a daily rate for the enablers, which gives a certain pressure and motivation also to the enabling teams to come up with compelling enabling offerings for the team that resonate with the demand of the streamlined teams. Platform teams can go for value stream, outcome-based, maybe team-based funding. So that's usually the things where I think that they worked out really well. What do you think of the beyond budgeting ideas in context of team topologies? When I said the sentence, there are also books in the Agile space and so on that also have some ideas. I was actually in my brain looking for that name of the book. It's called the Beyond Budgeting book. There are a bunch of great ideas in there, and you should definitely look into that. It's late in the day. I forgot the name of the book. Thanks for giving that to me with your question. That's actually a great book. And I think, wait a minute. It's this one. Yeah, I actually had it in the shelf next to me. All right. Another question was from Imker Podcast, Marie und Gäste. What's the favorite book of 2024 again? I will show the slide. That's the Flow Engineering book by Steve Pereira and Andrew Davis. That's a really great read. And the other one was Learning Systems Thinking by Diana Montelian. But of course, a lot of the ideas propagated by Diana resonate with the Team Topologies community. And but that's like, bam, the perfect fit, that book, in that space. And I actually apply a lot of these ideas in practice when I work together with Team Topologies. So you should, if you've read Team Topologies and think about addressing flow, that's a perfect read. All right, so that's it from my side. There was, so first of all, thank you very much. There is actually a German version of Team Topologies out there, which I translated for O'Reilly Germany. You can follow me on LinkedIn or other social networks like Blue Sky or Mastodon. I'm no longer on the burning trash dump anymore, but there are other offerings. And there was another question by Ajmal Khan. How can Team Topologies help in an org where digital teams are separated from teams building APIs for them to use? I think that is a very, very widespread thing. And maybe, just maybe, I'm pulling some strings here. Those teams that are building APIs, they may have a platform team character so that they provide a business platform with their APIs for the teams that are very, very close to the value delivery, to the value streams that are very much at the brink of the interaction with the customer. So I would say stuff like that is very often mapped as a streamline teams and platform teams. All right, so that's it from my side. I want to see you all at Agile Meets Architecture in April. It's going to be a great conference, believe me, with many, 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 many great speakers and a cool program. We will have a Team Topologies panel at the evening at Agile Meets Architecture on the first day, where I will be the host of the panel. And I need to talk to some folks if they want to join me on the panel. And we will also share our experiences and so on. Yeah. So, Jörg, let me hand over the mic to you again.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you already answered all the questions, so I don't, or at least the questions that have been there up until now. So if anybody has another question, please just ask them in the chat. Thank you for reminding me of the concept of thinnest viable platform. I was actually, I forgot about that, to be honest, that it was in the book, but that's a very, very important thing. And yeah, it's good for speed, especially because of the speed of development in all these platform areas that you're not developing too much there. So let's have a look. Any other questions so far? I don't see anything. Well, one thing that came to my mind too was you were talking about enabling teams that need other skills than just the ones that are directly connected to their enabling part. So this sounds a lot like they need to have a lot of know-how in change management. How do you actually how do you enable the enablement team in change management?
Well, change management is actually one thing, and I think that's an advanced topic. I think the key things that these folks have to learn first or skill up on first are like coaching techniques, communication techniques, and to get a sensor where written communication is the best, where maybe a presentation is a good thing, where pair programming or mob programming maybe a suitable means of enabling, and create a well-fitting mix of different enabling offerings like written tutorials, video hackathons, or whatever, together with like face-to-face pair programming offerings, for instance. Yeah. To do that. And I think that is, besides of knowing your stuff that you're talking about, the most important thing. Now, the change management, I think that has a lot to do with empathy in this case. So that you sense, okay, can this team take the next step, or would they be overwhelmed with that? I've seen quite a few enabling teams rolling over other teams. and totally blasting their minds. That's not a good thing. And I think the first key step is really having empathy, and not approaching like Batman, the superhero, or wherever, somewhere, and rolling over folks. It's not about the enabler. It's about the folks who do get enabling. And I think in this context, that's the major change, man, I think, because this is where change is really happening, that you have a very balanced approach. Where do I move people out from their comfort zone? So where do I let them swim? Where do I guard them? How do I guide them? And so on. And I think if you do that in an empathetic way, you will see change.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks. Okay, I don't see any other questions. So thanks a lot, Michael. To everybody in the audience, let us know how you like the stream. Not the stream. We plan to do something like that in March again. So we would really appreciate your feedback. And there's also quite a lot of great talks on our YouTube channel. So don't forget to subscribe. Also, we are starting a promotion tomorrow for our conference, where you can get one of the books. Michael's translation of Team Topologies is there with your ticket if you buy one, because we just found out that we have so many book authors at our conference that we thought, well, let's get some of those books together and let the people sign them, and just give you one of those if you get a ticket. So take a look at the conference. There's also down below a discount code that you can use because you have been staying with us all the time. You get the ticket a little bit cheaper. And I thank you a lot. Thank you, Michael, for this great talk. And thanks, everybody, for watching.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Thanks for sharing your evening with us. And we see you in Berlin.
See you in Berlin. Bye.
Best.